He woke with a gasp. White. Everything was white. A blinding, sterile white. It surrounded him, suffocated him. He sat up, heart pounding, disoriented. Where was he? He remembered nothing. He pushed himself to his feet, legs unsteady. The room was bare, no furniture, no windows, no door, just a seamless, endless white. Panic welled in his chest. He ran his hand over the smooth wall, searching for a crack, an imperfection, anything, nothing. He screamed, a primal sound ripped from his throat. His voice echoed for a moment, then vanished into the oppressive silence. He was trapped. Days blurred, or were they hours? Time seemed to stretch and compress, playing tricks on his mind. The clock on the wall, with its blurred hands, offered no solace, no anchor to reality. Time had lost all meaning. The changing light in the room was his only indication that the world outside was still moving, but inside everything was stagnant, frozen in a perpetual state of nothingness. The white room became his prison, his tormentor. The walls, devoid of any features, seemed to close in on him, suffocating him with their stark emptiness. He felt like a caged animal, desperate for escape. He paced until exhaustion forced him down, only to rise and begin again. The repetitive motion was his only outlet, a futile attempt to break the monotony. Each step echoed in the silence, a reminder of his isolation. The silence was almost unbearable. It was a heavy, oppressive silence that seemed to press down on him from all sides. He covered his ears, but there was no escaping it. Broken only by the sound of his own breathing, the beating of his own heart. These sounds, once unnoticed, now became his constant companions, a rhythmic reminder of his solitary existence. He craved sound, any sound. The silence was maddening, a void that needed to be filled. He longed for the hum of a radio, the chatter of voices, anything to break the oppressive quiet. Music, traffic, the whisper of wind through trees. These were the sounds of life, sounds he had taken for granted. Now they were distant memories, tantalizingly out of reach, anything but this deafening quiet. He screamed, hoping to shatter the silence, but his voice was swallowed by the room, leaving him more desperate than before. The lack of stimulation gnawed at his sanity. His mind, deprived of external input, began to turn inward, creating phantoms and illusions to fill the void. He began to see things in the white, shadows and shapes that danced on the periphery of his vision, teasing him with their fleeting presence. Shapes, faces, fleeting glimpses of memories that might not be his own. They were fragments of a reality that seemed to slip further away with each passing moment. His mind, starved for input, was beginning to turn on itself. He questioned his own thoughts, his own memories, unsure of what was real and what was imagined. He was losing himself in the white. The boundaries between himself and the room blurred, and he felt as though he was dissolving into the very walls that confined him. Then the voices began. At first they were barely perceptible, mere whispers that seemed to float on the edge of his consciousness. He couldn't tell if they were real or just figments of his imagination, but they were there, haunting him. Faint at first, whispers carried on the edge of silence. They seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once, filling the empty room with an eerie presence. He strained to listen, trying to make sense of the disjointed murmurs. He would stop, holding his breath, straining to hear. Each time he thought he caught a word or a phrase, it would slip away, leaving him more confused and anxious. The uncertainty gnawed at him, making it hard to distinguish reality from illusion. Were they real or figments of his unraveling mind? The line between sanity and madness blurred as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. He questioned his own perception, wondering if he was losing his grip on reality. The voices grew stronger, clearer. They were no longer just whispers, but distinct words and phrases. He could hear them talking, discussing things he couldn't quite understand. It was as if they were having a conversation just out of his reach. He could make out words, phrases. They spoke of experiments, subjects, and data. The realization hit him like a cold wave. They were talking about him. He was the subject of their discussions, the focus of their experiments. They were talking about him, analyzing him like a lab rat. The feeling of being watched, of being under constant scrutiny, intensified. He felt exposed, vulnerable, like a specimen under a microscope. He learned his designation Subject 7. The cold clinical term made him feel dehumanized, reduced to a mere number in their records. But it also gave him a sense of identity, a clue to his existence in this sterile, white void. He was part of an experiment, his purpose unknown. The realization was both terrifying and enlightening. He was not alone in his suffering. There were others, other subjects, other experiments. He was part of something larger, something he needed to understand. The knowledge, terrifying as it was, brought a flicker of hope. He wasn't alone. There were others like him, and perhaps together they could find a way out. This hope became his lifeline, a beacon in the oppressive darkness. Someone somewhere was watching, controlling. The thought was both comforting and disturbing. If he could find out who was behind the cameras, who was orchestrating this experiment, maybe he could find a way to escape. If he could just understand their purpose, maybe he could escape. He pored over the notes, the diagrams, trying to piece together the puzzle. Every bit of information was a potential key to his freedom. He clung to that hope, a lifeline in the white void. It was the only thing keeping him sane, the only thing giving him the strength to continue. He would find a way out. He had to. Subject 7. The words echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of his situation. But they also fueled his determination. He was more than just a subject. He was a person, and he would reclaim his identity. Analyzing, experiment. The words on the screen were a stark reminder of his reality, but they also held the promise of answers, of understanding. He would decode their secrets, and he would find his way out of the void. Food appeared as if by magic. A tray would materialize in the center of the room, always the same bland, tasteless nourishment. He ate to survive, but each meal fueled his suspicion. Why keep him alive? What were they hoping to achieve? He searched for cameras, for any sign of observation, but found nothing. The room remained a blank canvas, a stage for his torment. The constant surveillance, even unseen, chipped away at his sanity. He was exposed, vulnerable. Every thought, every fear laid bare before his unseen observers. He was a prisoner in his own mind as much as in the white room. Time ceased to exist. Days and nights melted into an endless white blur. His internal clock shattered, leaving him adrift in a sea of white. Sleep offered no escape, only fragmented dreams filled with more white, more voices. He tried to mark the passage of time. He scratched lines on the wall, but they offered no solace. Time was an abstract concept, meaningless in this sterile prison. He began to lose track of everything. How long had he been here? Weeks, months, years? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Was there an end to this white nightmare? Then one day something changed. A flicker in the periphery of my vision. I turned, heart pounding. Was it a trick of the light, a hallucination? No. There in the far corner of the room, a faint outline shimmered. A door. I stumbled towards it, hope surging through me for the first time since I awoke in this white hell. As I drew closer, the outline solidified. It was a door, all right. A simple white door with no handle, no hinges. But it was a way out. I reached out, my hand trembling. This was it, my escape. He pushed against the door. It swung open silently, revealing more white. But this white was different. It pulsed with an eerie energy. He hesitated, a primal fear gripping him. What lay beyond? He stepped through the door and gasped. Standing before him, an exact replica of himself. Same clothes, same bewildered expression, same desperate yearning for escape. The doppelganger met his gaze, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. "Who are you?" His voice was a dry rasp. The reflection chuckled. "You already know the answer. I'm you, or rather, you're me." His mind reeled. What was happening? Was this another hallucination, another layer of the experiment? "This isn't real," he stammered. "None of this is real." "Oh, but it is," the doppelganger countered, his voice a chilling echo of his own. "This is the next stage, the true test." "Test? What test?" The doppelganger stepped closer, his eyes boring into his. "They want to see which version of you is stronger, which one deserves to exist." A chill shot down his spine. Deserves to exist? What did that even mean? "There's only one way to find out," the doppelganger continued, a predatory gleam in his eyes. He knew then this wasn't just about observation, this was about survival. His double lunged, a mirror image of himself, yet somehow more menacing. The white room, stark and unyielding, echoed with the sounds of their struggle. Every movement, every breath was a reflection of his own, yet twisted in a way that made his skin crawl. He reacted instinctively, throwing up his hands to defend himself. The clash of their bodies was a symphony of survival, each strike a desperate plea for dominance. His mind raced, trying to understand the purpose of this brutal confrontation. They grappled, two identical figures locked in a desperate struggle for dominance. The room seemed to shrink around them, the walls closing in as their battle intensified. Sweat dripped from his brow, mingling with the blood that now stained the pristine floor. The white room, once his prison, now became a battleground. It was as if the very essence of the room had changed, morphing from a place of confinement to an arena of survival. Every corner, every shadow seemed to pulse with the energy of their conflict. He fought with a ferocity he didn't know he possessed. Each punch, each kick was fueled by a primal instinct to survive. He could feel the raw power coursing through his veins, a power that both terrified and exhilarated him. His survival depended on it, but why? What was the purpose of this cruel test? The questions gnawed at him even as he fought with every ounce of strength he had. The room seemed to mock him, its sterile whiteness a stark contrast to the chaos within. Why pit him against himself? The thought echoed in his mind, a haunting refrain that he couldn't shake. Was this some twisted experiment? A test of his will, his strength, his very essence? The answers eluded him, lost in the haze of battle. What purpose did it serve? The question lingered unanswered as he continued to fight. Each blow, each struggle seemed to bring him closer to some hidden truth, a revelation that lay just beyond his grasp. The room, the fight, his double, it all seemed to be part of some grand design. As they fought, a terrifying truth dawned on him. This wasn't just a physical battle, it was a battle for his very soul. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut, leaving him breathless and reeling. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. Maybe there was no right answer. The thought was both liberating and terrifying. In this white room, stripped of all pretense and artifice, he was forced to confront the deepest parts of himself. The fight was not just against his double, but against his own fears and doubts. Maybe the experiment wasn't about finding the better version of him, but about pushing him to a point where such distinctions ceased to matter. It was a test of endurance, of resilience, of the very fabric of his being. The room, the fight, his double, they were all part of a larger, more profound challenge. In the white room, the battle for his sanity had become a battle for his very soul. The lines between reality and illusion blurred, leaving him to question everything he thought he knew. The fight was not just for survival, but for understanding, for meaning, for a sense of self that transcended the physical. And in that moment, he realized that the true battle was within.